Hey, I'm ZSH Plays, welcome back to San Bernardino Zoo, and welcome back to the Panda Garden. Today we're going to be building an indoor mountainous habitat for one of the cutest animals in the game, the Red Panda, and then I'm going to take you on a walking tour of the entire Panda Garden area. Lots to get through today, so let's go. This is the area that we set aside for the Red Pandas in last week's episode. You can see the rock walls there, we'll be changing those later, and the habitat that we're going to be building for them today is mainly inspired by River Wonders in Singapore, which is also the main source of inspiration for the whole interior of this building. And one of the most striking things about that habitat is that the pandas have actual trees to climb up and sleep in, some form of pine tree, I'm presuming, and I want to replicate that here, which is going to be interesting because you can see the ceiling here is way lower than your average pine tree. So I'm just going through all the trees I can find that look appropriate and are also climbable, so the pandas can actually get up them, and then we're going to see which ones we can sink down so that they're not sticking through the ceiling, but they still look like trees rather than just sort of the top halves of trees. This one looks good. Let's find some more. I want this habitat to look very different to the giant panda habitat on the other side of this path, but also have some points of similarity as well, so they feel like they belong in the same building. And these trees are going to go a long way to helping us achieve that. This one here is really cool. Love the sort of gnarly branches on this one. And what we're going to do is set this up so the pandas can climb through the trees, get up onto those rocks at the back there, and get onto some climbing frames that we're going to put in front of them. So they got loads of climbing room everywhere, and we're going to use food and enrichment to make sure they spend a lot of time climbing. They do spend quite a bit of time on the ground in my experience, or they seem to be happy to anyway from the zoos that I've seen. So we've got quite a big ground area for them here as well. The way we're going to keep them in the habitat is by digging down the terrain at the front here a little bit. We've got these rocks already, and then we're going to put some smooth concrete in front of those rocks so that they can't climb it, and the whole thing will be too high for them to jump over. We'll cover up the gap between the concrete and the larger rocks with these small faux rock piles. What an amazing piece this is. Don't know how people built anything in the game without this piece. And then we'll head over to the giant pandas. This is the climbing frame that we built for them, and I want to take a little bit of this and put it into the red panda habitat. That's going to provide some continuity, and the left part especially with those roots on it, it looks really cool, so I want to use it again. It's too big for the red panda habitat, so we're just going to chop off a little bit of it, just have one platform in the center so we can put the food and enrichment there and make sure that the red pandas spend at least some of their time up on that platform, and that'll ensure we get really good views for the guests. And with that in place, we can get the back of the habitat looking interesting. So we're going to do something here that we haven't done since episode 3 maybe, I can't remember, when we built the red crown crane habitat, which is use screens for the back of the habitat. We've got a pretty small space here. It's nice and long, there's enough space for the pandas, but the back wall is going to be pretty close to the guest path. So we want to make it look more interesting than just a load of white concrete. So we're going to fill it with billboards and use some screenshots I took in a Planet Wild episode set in China, nice and appropriate for the red pandas. And we're going to fill the whole back of the habitat with those, and then use some more rock piles to make that look a bit more naturalistic and sit that in nicely. And we're just going to get this nice sky with some trees as well, going all the way around the back of the habitat. It's going to make the habitat feel bigger and look really nice. Then we're going to put some items on this central platform to ensure that pandas come up here. We've got some leaves for them to sleep on. We'll get a little herb scent marker up here and a termite feeder as well to make sure that they are up here as much as possible. And with that done, now we can start joining all the climbing elements together. So I wanted to use this cute little bridge in the giant panda habitat, but it was just too small. But it will certainly be good enough for the red pandas. So we're going to have this joining up some of these bits of rock at the back of the habitat, and then also joining up this new little climbing frame I've built to the main platform that we just put in. We're just going to have these running all around the habitat, so there's so many places that the red pandas can climb in. Put some supports in here to make it look a bit more realistic, so it's not just floating in midair. All these pieces are climbable, and don't forget that you can turn climbing off on climbable pieces if you want to make sure the animals always take a certain route or anything like that. Thanks for all your Franchise Master suggestions in the last episode, by the way. I'll be answering one of your questions a bit later on in the video. Now we're going to make the rocks at the back a bit more exciting. So what we're going to do is we've put some natural rocks into them like we did in the giant panda habitat, and now we're going to match the color of them so we get a much more sort of mountainous feel in here rather than the more yellowy rocks that we've got in the giant panda habitat. This will just make things look nice and different, and it goes really nicely with the pine trees as well. It's looking a little dark in here, so later on we're going to add some skylights into the roof, and I want to put a keeper gate in as well so that we can see where the keepers get into the habitat. The billboards curve here, so what we need to do is use two doors and sink them into the billboards at a slightly different angle, so we end up with just the outline of a door and the handle there. It takes a little bit of fiddling about to get them to line up properly, but once we zoom out, that looks really good. And then we'll replace all this grass with some nice soil. You can see I've dropped some rocks and some logs in there as well. We'll chuck in a few more plants, and this habitat is already starting to look really nice. The plant choice for these animals, with it being just taiga and tundra Asian plants, is really limiting. I'm not a fan of Frontier's decision to update the way the plants affect the animals' happiness, so I'm using plants I probably haven't used in about 3 years in this habitat. But we do have one nice new one, this variegated ivy, so I'm going to put some of that around there. Just makes it look a little different to the one in the giant panda habitat. And then I want to put in an implied off-show area for the red pandas. So this air duct here is the correct size for a red panda to squeeze through it. And we're going to use this to make it look like they've got a couple of little holes they can go through to get them into an off-show area. So we'll put these into the billboards here, and then we'll take one of the most useful pieces in the game, this little European brick, colour it black, and then use this to make it look like there is a sort of passageway here going through the billboard. Can't make an actual hole using these billboards, so we'll just do an implied one. And then we'll take some of these African stick pieces and use these to construct a little platform and join that up to the rocks that they can climb on. And then finally some brackets to hold it all up, and I think this sells the idea really nicely that they've got another little area they can get into if they want. There we go, that looks good. We'll put some skylights in the roof in a minute to get some more light into it, but now it's time for Franchise Masters. How many times in Planet Zoo have you selected an item that you want to copy, known exactly where you need to move it to, and then once you've selected it and tried to copy it, discovered that it is not moving on the axis that you want it to? Let's take this fence as an example. It's a straight fence, you know exactly when you copy it where you want it to go, but when you try, you can see here that unaccountably the axis it moves on is not correct and it's all off kilter. This drives you insane. So how do you fix it? You can try switching to the world axis, but that makes it even worse. Now it's moving in a completely different direction, and that's not what you want at all. So how do you stop this from happening? Well, here's the solution. When you first place a piece down, so we use that same arbor fence as an example, let's say you want to start building with this, you can spin it on the vertical axis like this, and that's fine. And you're probably going to instinctively line it up with the way you want it to go. Let's say we want it to go this way. You put it down and then you'll start copying it. Now, when you've just got one piece, it's fine, it will copy in the correct way, but you're unlikely to just want to use one piece. You're probably going to want to have multiple pieces to create a group to make something that looks interesting. So let's try that. We put down that same piece, we spin it vertically to get it the way that we want it, and the way to solve this problem is not to spin it on the horizontal axis. Regardless of which way you want it to go in the final build, leave it in the orientation that it is when you place it down. If you leave it, then we can start adding extra pieces to it. So let's add some pieces on the side here. This is not the greatest fence you've ever seen, this is just for illustration purposes, but we'll place some pieces on the side of it, turn it into a group. You can see here, if we copy it, because we've got multiple pieces, the exact same thing that happened last time happens. It's off kilter. However, if we switch it to the world axis and then start copying it, as if by magic, it now copies perfectly on the axis that you want it to. And the reason for that is that we didn't change the horizontal axis when we placed it down. If you keep that in mind when you start building, then you're not going to have any problems with things being on the wrong axis. Thanks to MX Lenore NZ for that question. Hope that was useful. Let's get back to the build and start adding those skylights in. So I've got this African piece, which is a perfect circle, and it's really useful because it's flexicolor. So we're going to drop this down and then move it onto the area of the roof that we want it to be in and get it so it's just poking up. This roof is slanted, so you're not going to see all of it at this point. And then all we need to do is start deleting the panels that the roof is made up of and replace them with the smallest plaster panel. And we're going to take multiple versions of this and just place it around to fill in the gap that we've just created. And then when we get close to the African piece, we can start spinning them so they exactly fill in the gap around it without intruding into the space of the African piece itself. And if we keep doing this all the way around, what we'll end up with is the exact same roof that we had before, but now with a perfect circular hole in it that we can turn into a skylight. We'll keep moving these small plaster pieces round until we've got this section of the roof filled back in. If you make sure position snap is on, then you can ensure that the plaster pieces exactly follow the angle of the previous ones. And then we'll take a piece of glass and drop it into that hole that we've created here. And once we've got the glass in, then we've got ourselves a perfect little skylight. And we're going to make 3 of these and have these in certain places around the roof, so they throw a pool of light in onto the habitat itself and make it look even better. We'll put these little bamboo barriers in that we created for the giant panda habitat, and then we just need to finish off the building itself. So we're going to put an exit in. We use a similar theme that we used for the entrance, so some of these plant panels, some white plaster, slightly Chinese looking design on it there with the PVC doors. We'll drop in some more of the lamps that we created last week, and then we'll move on to the outside. So I've created a similar path to what we had in the entrance. This really sleek looking patterned white concrete effect that goes around here. This is the old monorail station by Africa that we're at. This is going to be the exit or the second entrance, depending on which part of the zoo you're coming from, that you're going to go into. We'll put some of the new bush pieces down here. Love these pieces. I'm really happy with how this exit looks. It almost looks as nice as the entrance, but we'll see that in the tour in a second. And that is the Panda Garden complete. Let's check out the red pandas. Here they are on the feeding platform that we built with the termite mound here. Just remember, as long as the staff can get up the paths or the bridge or whatever you've built to get onto the platform, then you can put food up here. This little dude is having the time of his life on his termite mound, and the other one is in the background. You can see here, and you'll see better in the next shot, the little pools of light that we get in here now from the skylights that we put in. Let's jump into Explore Cam and take a full tour of the Panda Garden. We're going to enter the Panda Garden from Madagascar today. When we do the full tour of the finished zoo, I'll make sure to go in from the Indian forest area so you can see it from that direction. This view here, where we've got the Indian forest away on our left, and you can see the Panda Garden through the willow trees, is already one of my favourite views in the zoo. I've put a little garden in here. We've got some hedges on the left and some of the Madagascan plants, which then turn into some of the more Asian plants down here to lead us into this area. And then we've got the bed of plants that we put in last week. Everything is coming together really nicely. On the left here, we've got the off-show area for the tiger, which I've covered in the same motif that we've used for the Panda Garden, so that sits in nicely. Need to adjust some pathing there as she walks through the wall. And then we get to the Panda Garden itself. So on the left, we've got those big billboards with the panda photo on it that we did last week. And we've got a garden to the right. And in front of us here, we've got this beautiful ornamental Chinese-style lake. We might have some more Asian animals in the background there if we get any in the next DLC. And then down here, we've got the pandas' footprints, which lead us into the habitats themselves. I've done some more work on the plant wall here, a few different grasses and some more plants in here to make it look a bit more interesting. We've got some guests in there already. And here is the entrance sign with a font courtesy of Robin Bird. Let's go in. Here we've got the entrance area, and through the PVC curtain we've got the little waterfall we made last week. I've switched out the concrete for some more Asian style rocks there. I think that looks nice. And here is the first giant panda habitat. Oh, and there's one right there using the scatter feeder. Great little view here with their platform in the foreground. It's a shame, as so often in franchise mode, that the habitat is so big. I feel like pandas don't really need this much space. They're pretty sedentary, but it looks really nice. Let's check out the next bit. So as we go up this path here, we've got some of Lion's signs from the workshop down there. So good for making your builds look more realistic with very little effort. And then to the left, we've got the red pandas that we just built. There's one up on the platform now. Or possibly both of them, I think. One of them's just climbed down. But there we go. I'm really pleased with this one. The fact that you can make it smaller just makes it feel more realistic. Got the keeper up there, filling up their water bowl. And you can see the light coming in through the skylights as well. I like that. Looking at this as it's finished, I might try and actually get some more plants down on the ground level in here. I think it looks a little bit bare. We'll have to check their traversable area. But they can climb all the way around this habitat. All the rocks at the back, the little rope bridges. Everything works perfectly, which is very pleasing. We've got the staff area down here. I've just put a door in to cover that up. Let's check out the other side of the giant pandas. Doesn't seem to be any of them. Okay, there's one just sat in the doorway there. Little PVC strip doorway that splits the two habitats, or one habitat as it actually is. But yeah, I'm really happy with this. The roof especially I think looks really cool. Got another one of Lion signs down there. Lots of great viewing for the guests. And like I say, I'm really happy with that roof. Let's head on down to the exit. We'll follow these guests here. And I'll show you where the area ends. So you come out here into that last bit we just built. You can see the African monorail station up there, and then we can walk around here, and this will join us up to the Somali wild ass habitat and the entrance to the African forest. And there we go, that's the Panda Garden. I was figuring that would take 2 episodes rather than 3, but I'm glad I spent the time on it. I'm really pleased with that. I think that's one of the best builds in the zoo. Let me know in the comments what you think. Thanks to the 2 latest members of the Explorers Club, Don M and Victoria Post. Hit the join button on the channel if you want to see your name up here. Thank you for watching as always, and I'll see you next week for some more Planet Zoo. Bye.